Hey, everybody, welcome to Saturday's edition of Weekend Waypoints, a production of SEC Extra and D1Baseball.com. I'm your host, Joe Healy, here to recap Friday's action around the SEC and give you a little peek ahead at what's on tap for Saturday. Before we get to anything else, though, I have to remind you that this episode of Weekend Waypoints and every episode of Weekend Waypoints this season is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Get ready for a new season of fishing fun with Academy Sports and Outdoors and reel in the best gear, low prices every day. Plus, Academy offers easy ways to shop and save time, like free 1 hour in-store or curbside pickup on academy.com orders. All right, interesting Friday around the SEC in various ways. Not a ton of tight games, although one very notable tight game we will get to first. But a lot of blowouts. Some of them pretty impressive. Shout out to Texas A&M putting 17 on South Carolina in 7 innings. But let's get to the game of the day, and I think it's pretty obvious looking at the slate what that one is going to be. It is Ole Miss and Tennessee. Tennessee 3, Ole Miss 2. Obviously, big storylines here included Liam Doyle and Andrew Fisher returning to face their former team in Oxford. Obviously, it was quite the environment, but Liam Doyle thrived in it. 8 1/3 innings, 3 hits, 2 runs, 2 walks, 14 strikeouts. Andrew Fisher, as we scroll back up to the hitter side of this, Andrew Fisher 1 for 2, a couple of walks, one strikeout, which I'm sure I did. I was at my own game, so I did not see this game live, but I have to imagine that one strikeout for Andrew Fisher was a big moment for the Ole Miss faithful there. Really cool from what I heard from people who were there. Really fun environment. It was kind of what Swayze is at its best, and unfortunately for those fans, they did not come away with a win, but it was a obviously really really close game here. The only thing for Doyle was one big swing to Austin Foley, 2 run home run, and that's what kept Ole Miss in the game and made it 3-2. But other than that, he was just awesome. And there's a comment in here. Let me find it. Sam Smith says it seemed like Doyle and Sam, if I remember correctly, was there last night. It seemed like Doyle fed off the Ole Miss crowd last night. Every time there was an "FU Doyle" chant, he struck the batter out. Yeah, motivation could be a funny thing, man. Like some guys in that type of atmosphere would shrink, understandably. Like that's tough to pitch in a hostile environment. But on the flip side, there are guys who are fueled by that kind of stuff. And based on last night, it kind of appears that Liam Doyle is the latter because he was awesome in that game. I was impressed by Ole Miss too. Frankly, pitched well to keep them in that game. Especially Mason Morris in the bullpen. He was awesome and kept his team in the game and gave him a chance to win the game. They ultimately Doyle was just too good, but the Rebels had a chance to win that game, and so I came away fairly impressed there. I think it seems like it's going to be a pretty competitive weekend from start to finish. So I think there was a lot to like on the Ole Miss side too, even if you ended up dropping that game, one that you obviously would have liked to have, not just for the standings reasons, but also the Liam Doyle piece of the equation there. So really fun game in Oxford. Looking forward to the next couple of games in that series. All right, we got some other comments in here. Joey says, "Hey Joey, how's it going? This is a Nico safe space. No Nico mentioned starting now. Yeah, that's the big news in college sports this morning. You could read up on it yourself if you like, but seems like quite a soap opera situation unfolding with Tennessee's quarterback, or should I say former quarterback, it appears now. So yeah, you can I'm sure read all about that. I think Pete Thamel had the tweet that I think set off the firestorm here, but interesting stuff nonetheless. Ryan says, not sure if he's the best pitcher in the SEC, but Liam Doyle is absolutely the most fun to watch. Dude is electric. Yeah, I 100% agree on the most fun to watch. And if you said, Joe, you've got one game to win against a good lineup, who are you taking? He's I don't I would probably default to taking him, although Kyson Witherspoon is in that mix. I'm sure there's others I'm just forgetting. Before the season, I would have said Ryan Prager. I'm less sure of that now. But yeah, if it's not Liam Doyle, he's one of a couple of guys that are really really in that mix. Let's get to James. Good morning, and good morning to you, James. Man, that was a disappointing performance by LSU. Give credit to Auburn. Dutton pitched the game of his life against his former team. Yeah, seems like kind of a theme this season, by the way, in the SEC is revenge games. Obviously Doyle and Dutton, but Cam Kozel against Vanderbilt was awesome. maybe at least one more that I'm missing. I mean, last year we had Michael Braswell against South Carolina in the SEC tournament, I believe, but I feel like there was one more this year that I'm just kind of missing. But anyway, it does seem like a little bit of a theme this year. He also says Jay needs to start Michael Braswell at third. Tanner isn't it? I don't think Braswell. I don't think Jay Johnson will hesitate to put Braswell back in the lineup. I think part of the reason why he's maybe playing around with that position and just in general is that understanding that the roster's in good shape, right? You've proven that you're a high level offense. You feel really good about the pitching, so I do think it gives Jay some license to kind of maybe mess around with the lineup a little bit. I'm not saying he's not trying to win games. Obviously, he is, but I do think there's nothing wrong with experimenting a little bit. But you're right in that Michael Braswell is the more proven option. You know what you're going to get. Like, yes, there's a little bit of a ceiling on him as a player, but he proved last year that he could handle everyday play on the infield, and he's probably a better third baseman than he is a shortstop, just because some of his limitations at shortstop aren't as much of an issue at third base. So yeah, I don't think Jay will hesitate to go back to Braswell at some point. Jamie Roberts says, "Go Hogs!" Yeah, big win last night for the Hogs. I was in the building at Foley Field for it. You can read I wrote a piece about Aiden Jimenez and kind of how he's been the quiet MVP of the pitching staff, which is not something I would have anticipated before this season. I didn't know how much they'd get from Aiden Jimenez, period, considering that he missed all of last year with Tommy John at Oregon State. He's now about 13 months removed from that Tommy John. You just never know. I would have bet on him pitching some, but I was not anticipating him being certainly the most valuable reliever and perhaps the most valuable pitcher on the entire staff. So I wrote about him. So go check that out if you've not done so already last night or this morning. Kobe Walker says Hail State. No, yeah, big win there. Run rule game against Alabama. It's a big series for Mississippi State. We talked about that yesterday, so we'll talk about some details on that game as well as we go on. Liz says, "Woot, I'm actually awake to watch live." Shout out to you, Liz. A little bit later here today than normal, which I know for some folks that works better. So I appreciate you being in here live, Liz. Wyatt Forrest gave us a whoop. Yeah, that's 17-0. That'll get a chorus of whoops from the A&M folks. Speaking of A&M folks, Sean Miller says, "Good morning, Joe." He also asked, "What's worse in Oxford, 3-2 loss or completely burning Morris in the loss? That may hurt the next 2 days." Yeah, I mean, if you're going to use Morris that much, you'd like to get the win, right? It reminds me a little bit of how, we've talked about before Mississippi State losing games with Pico Khan on the mound or Oklahoma losing games with Kyson on the mound. When, you clearly have one guy who's your best bullet in the chamber, and Morris is kind of that for Ole Miss. So I don't think they have any regrets necessarily, but yeah, I mean that part does hurt for sure, because I think there are a lot of positives in the 3-2 loss that I think you could take moving forward, but not having Morris moving forward is definitely going to hamstring them. But don't be shocked, honestly, if you go back to the box score. I'm not going to pull it up, but I'm going to look at it here. Yeah, 65 pitches. I was going to say maybe you can bring him back in game 3 for an inning, but 65 is tough. But I wouldn't be shocked if he gets an out or two in Sunday's game especially if the series is on the line. Jim Dillingham says Sooners beat Vandy on Friday night without Kyson Witherspoon. Back spasms. Might be back this weekend. I saw that unless something has changed, Jim, and you may know more than I do, but he was going to start today against Vanderbilt. So we'll see how long they need him to go. Like if he's still battling some of it, then maybe he's on a little bit of a pitch count or what have you. But certainly good news for Oklahoma that it looks like he's good to go today after being scratched yesterday and kind of sending everyone, a lot of hearts in Norman skipped a beat yesterday when Kyson was a scratch. But sounds like he's going to be okay in the long term, certainly, and we'll start today, at least based on what I've seen. But yeah, it's a big win yesterday. Cade Crossland was really good. We'll talk about him as well. Sam Smith brings up a good point here. Tennessee has an entirely fresh bullpen. Yeah, I mean that is an advantage, especially when you compare it to Ole Miss having used its best bullpen arm. Nicholas Doherty, morning, Joe. Good morning, Nicholas. Out of these teams, who do you trust most going forward? Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, or Auburn? Huh. Um, Probably Ole Miss. I really like. How could you not like the offense? Even though last night, obviously against Doyle, what are you going to do? And the pitching does. They don't have as much ceiling on the mound as some other teams. They don't have the ceiling on the mound of Oklahoma. They don't have the ceiling on the mound of Vanderbilt. But they are. I like them being more well rounded than the other three teams here. Auburn after Dutton feels a little short on the mound. Oklahoma and Vanderbilt's lineups against really good pitching can sometimes shrink. So I'm going to go Ole Miss just because I like the well-roundedness. Also on the mound, yes, they're a little bit short, but they're old on the mound, and I like that too. So I'm going to go Ole Miss. But that's a good question, Nicholas. I appreciate you asking that. Carl Dunn says it was a given that Dutton was going to show out, and he did. Congratulations to Sammy. Wasn't LSU's night. Braswell will be at third, I think, for the rest of the weekend. That didn't cost LSU the game. Yeah, all good stuff there. Like I did think there was a chance that Dutton would really show out. So good for him. I mean, that has to feel good, right? Especially in his situation. It's different from Liam Doyle and Andrew Fisher because those guys were stars in Ole Miss, and had they been back at Ole Miss, they would have had prominent roles and life would have gone on. But in Dutton's case, he really kind of had to move on if he wanted to be like set up at going into the season as a weekend guy. Maybe he would have been at LSU too, but you look at the talent they have in the rotation and like probably not. And so, it was a move he kind of had to make, and to be able to succeed that way against his former team had to feel really good. And I think both parties can understand that that separation was probably best, right? I mean, I'm sure Jay would love to have Sam Dutton as another piece on the mound, but at the same time, I think he understands why Sam had to make that move. And then for Sam and Auburn, obviously, it's worked out really well. All right. Let's. We've got a bunch more comments in here, and I love that. So keep them coming if you've got them. But I'm going to pause right there. We're going to get to hitter and pitcher of the day. I'll circle back with some comments, and then we'll go from there. So, all right, let me pull up my very high tech hitter of the day document. I know you guys love it. Like the presentation here is just off the charts good. I know design is my passion, as you can imagine. Sip my water. Hang on one sec. All right. So hitter of the day is Bear Harrison, and just like we all had before the season, right? The key to the A&M offense is clearly Bear Harrison. I mean, jokes aside, he's swinging the bat really well, and I think that's been a part of what we've seen in this rebound for A&M is that they were willing, and credit to Michael Early. I mean, I guess you could argue he didn't really have much of a choice, but credit to Michael Early for just being willing to shake things up, to really lean on Terrence Keel, to go with Bear Harrison, to go with Sawyer Farr, there are other examples there too that I'm sure I'm just forgetting off the top of my head, but just willing to say, all right, this isn't working. Let's try something else. And Bear Harrison's been a big part of that, but just see the numbers there. 2 for 2 with a double, a home run, 7 runs batted in, and 2 hit by pitches for good measure there. So got on base all 4 times in a 7-inning game because it was obviously a run rule at 17-0. Jay Laviolette also for A&M with a 2 for 3 game. And Kane Kent, 3 for 4 with a homer, 4 runs batted in. Going back to the top of the list here, Tennessee's Gavin Keelan on the list, less because of 2 for 4 with a double, all that's a nice day, but also just to note that he's back in the lineup at DH. Obviously, really good news for Tennessee moving forward. They've been all right without him for the most part, but they'll obviously love having him back. At the game I was at, Vahiva Aloy, 2 for 3 with a homer, a walk, 3 runs batted in, 3 runs scored. Kuhio Aloy, 3 for 4, a walk, and 3 RBI. Kuhio Aloy had a hit that came off the bat at 111 miles an hour in that game. Just really big, strong guy. It goes without saying, but man, when he barrels a ball, like it is impressive. No doubt about that. Ethan Mendoza for Texas. As in Texas 6-3 win against Kentucky. We haven't mentioned that one yet. Just a really nice win for Texas. Not flashy necessarily, nothing like really jumps off the page too much at you, but they just keep getting it done. A nice 6-3 win over Kentucky. Mendoza 2 for 5, double, 4 runs batted in. Rylan Galvan 2 for 4 with a double and a walk. On the Kentucky side, from the leadoff spot, Luke Lawrence 2 for 4 with a walk in a game in which Kentucky was pretty quiet. offensively. A few Mississippi State guys, which makes sense considering they scored 13 against Alabama in an 8 inning game, a 13-3. Sawyer Reeves, big game. If not for Bear Harrison, probably the hitter of the day there, Sawyer Reeves, with a 4 for 5 day, including a home run, 4 runs batted in, 3 hits for Ace Reese, 2 hits for Hunter Hines, including a home run. On the Alabama side, Justin LeBron, a 3 for 5 day. For Auburn in the win against LSU, Bub Terrell, 3 for 4 with 2 doubles. On the LSU side, hey, there's another SEC player doing it against his former team. Chris Stanfield stays hot, 1 for 2 with a double, but also 2 walks there. And then for Oklahoma in that win against Vanderbilt, a tight game. The final score, what was it, 9-4? Doesn't really reflect how close that game was. At one point, it was a 1-run game. Jacob Humphrey hit a home run to make it a 1-run game, and then Oklahoma did a nice job the last couple of innings, tacking on some runs and making it a little more comfortable win than it looked like it was going to be. But offensively, Jason Walk, 3 hits, Dayton Taki, 3 for 3, Jackson Willits, 2 hits, including a home run. And his home run was big because it took a 1-run game and made it a 2-run game. It gave Oklahoma that initial breathing room, and they would obviously tack on more as time went on. But Bear Harrison, the hitter of the day. All right, we're going to go over to pitcher, and I think you can probably already guess who it is. That is Liam Doyle, 8 1/3, 3 hits, 2 runs, 2 walks, 14 strikeouts. Other good stuff, though. Mason Morris in that same game, we talked about him earlier. 5 shutout out of the bullpen, no walks, 8 strikeouts. The game I was at, Brian Curley, I mean, the stats didn't really jump out, but considering what the Arkansas lineup did after he left the game, I think his start was impressive. 5 innings pitched, 4 hits, 3 runs, just 2 earned, no walks, 5 strikeouts. Same with Zach Root, kind of. I mean, 3 runs early, but they all came in 1 inning. And then after that, he settled down, got into the 6th inning, a strong start there. I mentioned Jimenez, 2 1/3 hitless innings. His ERA in SEC play is now 0.59. Batters are hitting 140 against him. He did issue a walk yesterday, and that was the first walk he's issued to any SEC batter. Just incredible performance so far this season by Aiden Jimenez. In the Texas-Kentucky game, good starts both for Jared Spencer and Nate Harris, I thought. Obviously, they didn't get super deep into the game. 4 2/3 for Spencer, as you see here, 4 for Harris. But I think 2 things. One, Harris giving him 4 2/3. Spencer giving them 4 2/3 kept Texas on schedule. And we talked about that yesterday, how important that was going to be, given that Texas doesn't necessarily have the pitching depth of some others. So that was just enough to kind of keep them on schedule. And similarly for Nate Harris, it's only his, I believe, second weekend start. Yeah, second weekend start. And when you consider that, like, he's probably not as stretched out. He's probably not as comfortable. To give them those 4 strong innings, I think was huge. So obviously they'll look for a little more from him moving forward, but I think he's done enough to where you feel pretty confident, turning to him again on the weekend next week. So good stuff there. Stone Simmons in relief in that win against Alabama. He really held things down to where Mississippi State could run away with that game. 4 shutout innings. Justin Lampkin for A&M in that 17-0 win over South Carolina, 6 shutout. Sam Dutton, 6 shutout. We've talked about him. And then Kate Crossland stepping in for Kyson Witherspoon. Not an easy thing to do, just because it's like, okay, you were going to be the Saturday guy. Now you're moving up to Friday. You're stepping into some big shoes, and he handled it really, really well. Gave up just 2 runs, only one of them earned in 5 2/3 innings, 8 strikeouts on the day for Crossland. So really, really good stuff for him in a tight spot for sure. But pitch of the day, of course, Liam Doyle. All right, let's swing back to some comments. Why don't we here? Let's see. Sorry, I'm scrolling back. I apologize for the killing some time here. Sean Miller says, feels like Anderson going 135 pitches at Oklahoma last week might have been a mistake. Perhaps a little fatigue this week versus Aubie. It could be. He did get hit around a little bit. Wasn't a great day for Cade Anderson. Maybe. And I don't say that dismissively. It's just like, we'll never know, right? We're not in his body. But yeah, that could be. Sometimes there are knock-on effects of a long outing like that. But I think LSU honestly will still take that trade-off, as long as, if you and you can't guarantee this, but as long as you said, hey, you know what, for next week he'll be better. I still think what he did against Oklahoma they would take. Inside LSU Baseball with Jason Armstrong. Good to hear from you, Jason. Best thing about last night, LSU's Jacob Myers threw 12 pitches. 8 were strikes and 2 were nasty off-speed offerings, including a 91-mile-an-hour changeup that Ike Irish whiffed at. He's allowed 1 hit in 8 appearances. Yeah, Jacob Myers never gives up hits. That was true at Nichols. That is true at LSU. He folks don't hit him. It's just a matter of how many strikes. You nailed it there, Jason. That like you know it's just the game is, to use a tennis term, sometimes they'll say like the game is on his racket or her racket. Like Serena Williams, when she was so dominant, it was like, hey, the game is on Serena Williams' racket. If she plays well, there's not a lot the other person can do. I feel the same way about Myers. Like if he's in the strike zone, there's really not a ton other the batters can do, but he's just got to be in the strike zone. Uh, okay, yeah. So catching up here, Carl Dunn says he disagrees with Sean. Says Anderson had a decent game, just had bad luck in certain spots. He had enough rest. Um, and yeah, he did have 8 days rest. That's fair. So yeah, good back and forth there. All right. Papa Dragon, love that name. Obviously, the score ended up getting out of hand anyway, but Root escaping runners on second and third, one out with Zaborowski and Burnett up, felt like it clinched it. Yeah, that's a great call. Like that did feel like a big moment there. And you knew it because when he strikes out Zaborowski's reaction was really demonstrative. Not that he disagreed with any sort of umpiring thing, but just he was frustrated with himself because he got beat, and he knew how big that moment was. So you're absolutely right, because at that point, as you know, like the game was, it was 3-3. It was right there. It was close. Like it doesn't look like it in the score, but I promise you, the first 7 innings of that game felt tight, tight, tight. And was a great atmosphere, by the way, in Athens. Sellout. There were more people up at that house behind right field. There were more people out on the lawn there than I'd ever seen, maybe 5 times as many as I'd ever seen. So really good support in Athens for this baseball team. They were disappointed last night, though, because Arkansas got it done, and Root kind of navigating some of that stuff, was really big. Gunner says Arkansas bullpen also no hit Georgia once Jimenez took over. Yeah, I mean, and Dylan Carter through the ninth, and it was 1-2-3. So yeah, impressive stuff from the bullpen there. Logan Crow, Texas fan here, and welcome, Logan. I know Kentucky has 2 good starters going today and tomorrow, but how does their bullpen look beyond Rouse? It's not as deep as they would like, Logan. I'll give you that. Like Rouse is a guy they typically use to kind of piggyback, because he's a former starter at Radford, was a guy who was considered a weekend starting option for Kentucky this season, so they can give him multiple innings. But that's been kind of one of the things about this Kentucky season, is that they are kind of struggling to figure out who their trusted guys are. Some of them just don't have the numbers they thought. Simon Gregerson, Indiana State transfer, like his numbers haven't been what they expected. Robert Hogan was really good last year for the Omaha team. He hasn't been particularly good this year. Other guys have had some moments. Like Jackson Novi is a veteran who has done some nice things. James McCoy is a two-way guy who's actually kind of emerged as a pleasant surprise. But my point being, Logan, is that if you can get Cleaver and McKay out of the game earlier than Kentucky would like, let's say in the 5th inning or sooner, you really like your chances, because I just don't think Kentucky knows who their guys are in the bullpen enough to feel comfortable having to cobble it together. They would really like to just throw a couple of relievers, but Texas's offense, I don't think, is going to allow for that. So if you get those pitchers out of the game early, Logan, I think the Longhorns are in good shape. Jeremy Scott says roll Tide. And then Sean Miller says, I was worried something had happened to Jeremy. We can call off the search party. Yeah, me too. I'm glad to see. We were going to do a wellness check there on Jeremy, but here he is. Wyatt Forrest says the bear is growling. I assume that's a Bear Harrison reference. He really is. Big guy, Bear Harrison. The name kind of fits. Maybe not as big as Jared Jones, the other bear in the SEC, but I'd like to see them stand back to back, because maybe it's a comparison. Mark S. says, that ain't water, that's Mountain Dew. Don't BS us, Joe. Look, I would never BS you. This is water, but you are right that you probably see in my Highway to Hoover episodes, and when I'm on the D1 Baseball podcast, I'm a Diet Mountain Dew guy, for better or for worse, frankly, and probably for worse. Although I do switch to the caffeine-free Diet Mountain Dew after a certain hour of the day, after my doctor had a fair amount of concern about the amount of caffeine that Joe was ingesting in a given day. So we've made some adjustments, just like good ball players. We have made some adjustments, but yes, often it is Mountain Dew. But I assure you, this is water. I had coffee earlier, so even if I wanted Mountain Dew, like chasing coffee with the Mountain Dew doesn't sound like that would be very tasty. Sean Miller says, feels so good to actually see some Aggies on the list the last few waypoints after a hell of a drought for most of the season. Ain't that the truth, Sean? Sorrell's return has added some link to that lineup and sparked some others. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, Caden Sorrell's return has been huge, and I think A, because he's good, but also B, because it does take some pressure off some others. You know, it allows other players to just be themselves and um, just kind of not have to worry about I need to be the hero. I alone need to get us out of this funk. Like there's no longer that kind of pressure for anybody. So that is huge. Wesley Wells asked, "There are clear tiers in the SEC this year." Totally agree. Like very well defined, top, middle, and bottom, with um, maybe a couple of teams that are kind of floating between tiers, but generally yes. Um, are there any teams you feel are all time teams? I will agree with Mark here and say that it's too soon, but I do think there are some teams that have that capability. I mean, Arkansas is sitting here at 12-1, and looks like they might be the most well-rounded team in the country. If they're certainly if their lineup keeps swinging it like this, the pitching talent is obvious. So, yeah, it could they could be, but I'm with Mark that it's like a little too soon. But if you made me pick one, this Arkansas team is it. I mean, that's easy because they're number one in the country and they're 12-1 in the SEC. So it's not a. I'm not going out on a limb there, but I am impressed. Wyatt says Bear Harrison is coming into form as one of the top catchers in the SEC, and then he says nation question mark. A little soon on the nation part. And I know if you look at the defensive stuff, like probably not the best defensive catcher on the roster, but certainly the best offensive catcher on the roster. So from that standpoint, I mean, yeah, right now he's certainly one of the most dangerous in the SEC. But we'll see what the rest of the season has in store. Sean asks, any of the Woo Pig fans have an update on Souza? Was that a dislocated shoulder? And then Gunner came in afterwards and said, Sean, haven't heard what the injury was, but DVH said he's definitely out the rest of the weekend. And longer than that doesn't sound good for him at all. Update there. For those who didn't see the play, frankly, it was a base running mistake. He's on second base with less than 2 outs. I forget if there were no outs or 1 outs, but less than 2 certainly. And it's like just a routine ground ball to third base to Slade Alford, and for some reason he takes off for third base. I mean, the ball's right in front of him. Alford makes a heads up play and goes to tag him, and to try to avoid the tag, Souza kind of runs inside, like towards the home plate side of third base, and tries to kind of reach around to get to the bag. Alford tags him, and no malice, but he tags him pretty hard because Souza's trying to avoid the tag, so you kind of have to be forceful with the tag. And it looks like it, kind of popped his shoulder out. That's not a medical diagnosis. I am not a doctor or a trainer or what have you, but that's my guess. He was favoring the shoulder kind of like this. I don't know if you can really see, but kind of like holding it up when he came off the field. In the dugout after the game, he was in a sling. In my story about Jimenez, and I put this in the story, so this is not me, telling stories out of school. He said, it looks like he was like, it's disappointing when it looks like you've lost a guy for a while, and who knows how long. So I think they're anticipating it being something that is significant. Can't speak obviously to is it season ending or anything like that, but we are at a point of the year. I mean, don't look now, but we're 5 weeks away from being in Hoover essentially, and so the season is getting late early. So if it is lengthy, there's not that much length left in the regular season. So certainly hope he gets back. You never want to see an injury like that. But credit to Gabe Frazier, freshman infielder, came on for Souza and played second base and had a huge hit. Broke the tie with an RBI triple into the right center gap. A guy who hasn't had a ton of at-bats this year and came on and got it done. Walked a couple times after that. Really played well. So maybe this is just an opportunity for somebody to step forward and take control of that position the rest of the way. Let's see. Ryan says basic. Oh, there we go. Clicked it wrong. Your Aggies sure seem to have woken up, but would not want to play them the next few weeks. I mean, yeah, that's. I know you weren't directing that at me. You were directing that at Sean, Ryan. But like, I totally agree. That they are now kind of that team where and we'll see what happens today, but they kind of look like that team where it's like, I don't know how sustainable this is. I don't know what record they were going to end up with, but certainly they're so hot right now that you don't want them. You don't want to see them coming up on your schedule. All right, good points here. Gunner and Jeffrey both brought up that Souza was swinging it a little bit better of late. Yeah, he got up to a really rough start, but yeah, I had been swinging it a little bit better lately. But yeah, Gabe Frazier uh, a big moment for him yesterday. That's what DVH said in postgame was like, I went to him and said, hey, okay, man, this is your moment. Like, just go take it. And Frazier did. Um, Mark says, put Root and Jimenez in the same line like you did Ianson and Evans and Shores and Cowan last week. That's fair. Yeah, I could have. Had it not been for Dylan Carter pitching that one inning, not that I'm taking anything away from them, maybe I would have, just because visually it would have made more sense. But yeah, I mean, if you combine the two of them, you're looking at 8 innings, however many hits, because Jimenez didn't give up anything. So yeah, you put those two together, and it's a really impressive 8 innings. I totally agree. Says historically, John corrected himself. Historically, uh, although I do like historical lyrics, I like that. At first, I was intrigued and kind of thrown off because I was really hopeful that John Bro had put some historical lyrics in here. But historically, Auburn has always been a tough opponent for LSU. Coming into the series, I'd be satisfied with 2 out of 3. Yeah, I think that's fair, and it's still right in front of you. Obviously, you have a pitching advantage. Does LSU the next couple of days? You knew the Dutton start was going to be tough because A, of just the backstory there, but also B, that how good Dutton's been this season. So yeah, I think you absolutely take 2 or 3 there. Mark Heflin, man, I knew this was gonna. I think about this all the time. Actually, I tell you, when you increase screen size to see picture of the day, and then boom, you have a giant Joe Healy head on your screen, it can really scare you. Yeah, I think about that all the time. Actually, side note, with the program we use for this, there is actually a feature where I can preload the screen shares and stuff like that to avoid that from happening. It's just hard to have enough time to like set that up because I'm usually doing this, either after I get back from a game or, the morning right before I go live. So there's not enough time to do all that. But I apologize because I do think about that all the time. How we go from like people kind of doing this to see like and maybe I'll just increase the font size honestly on those hitter and pitcher documents. But you go from that to just my face. So I'll be cognizant of that. All right. Morning vis-a-vis. I see you there. Okay, this is good. Thank you, Sean, for doing this important update here. For the record, Bear Jones 6'4", 246, Bear Harrison 6'3", 230. Okay, so we can, and he says baby Bear Harrison. That's funny. That made me laugh. We can agree both fitting of the Bear nickname. At the bare minimum, we can agree on that. So thank you, Sean, for doing that important research there. Bear Jones has him by, at least according to listed, 1 inch and 16 pounds. So there you go. I'm scrolling through. There's a debate in there about teams we all like and hate. Jeffrey says, "What are you talking about? Kendall hates all teams equally." LOL. Agreed. That's the thing. Kendall just hates your. You can just assume Kendall just hates your team. That's at the bare minimum. Nicely done, Joe. Sean, that was an accident, but I will happily take credit for it. Thank you there. All right, let's one more thing. Let's talk game of the day Saturday before we move on. First of all, thank you for all the questions, all the interaction. Love that part of it. I kind of love this group of jokers we have here every morning on Weekend Waypoints. Game of the day for me is Vanderbilt at Oklahoma because I want to see what Kyson Witherspoon has today, given that he was scratched yesterday. Quick interjection. Christian says, as someone who's just now catching up to college baseball this season, welcome, Christian. What can you tell me about the SEC? Christian, there are some folks in the comments. If some of you regular commenters want to just like hit up Christian here in the YouTube comments and kind of get him caught up, give him some cliff notes, maybe just on your team, if nothing else, that would be very kind of you guys as we start to wrap up the show here. Where was I? Excited to see Kyson on the mound, just given that he was a scratch. What does he have? How far does he go? What does he look like? All that kind of stuff. Does his stuff seem normal, or is it maybe a tick down? All TBD on all that stuff, obviously. Um, it would be a huge series win for Oklahoma. Um, so like just because I try to phrase this the right way, but just like they feel like two teams, Vanderbilt and Oklahoma, even though I think Vanderbilt's record coming into the weekend was maybe a game or two better, but they feel like teams that are in a similar space. They're both teams that if you made me really pick where they're going to finish, it's kind of like the back of the host discussion or, high two seed kind of discussion. So winning this series at home, like Oklahoma needs to protect its home field, especially given what happened last week against LSU, which looked like no shade. Like if LSU is going to pitch like that, very few teams are going to win. So there's that, but it's just important that Oklahoma protects its home field here, gets this win against a team that's kind of set up similarly. Also, a quick shout out on the Oklahoma front. Shout out to Toby Rowland and the broadcast team over at Oklahoma. I was listening to last night's game on as I was headed back to my hotel in Athens, and they were broadcasting the game from the seats in right field, which was cool because on a couple of things. One, it led to some funny situations like when Jacob Humphrey hit a home run out to them, like directly at them. So that was kind of funny to hear that. Um, to hear that happening in real time, but also you could hear just a lot of like background noise, like from fans and from fans and other members of the broadcast team, people who were helping produce it. Like it felt kind of like a little bit of a peanut gallery situation where you had the broadcasters, but then you had you know, the kind of these other cast of characters. So anyway, I just thought it was a unique, kind of a cool deal, fun broadcast to listen to. So shout out to those guys because they do a good job in general on the broadcast. I love listening to the Oklahoma games when I'm driving, but last night was particularly fun. All right, how about that? 37 minutes. Love all the interaction, all the comments. Have a lot of fun talking about it every morning with you guys. I'll be back tomorrow morning with Saturday's recap and previewing Sunday's games. I will talk to you guys then. Thank you to Academy Sports and Outdoors. Almost forgot it there. We'll talk to you guys again tomorrow morning. Take care.